Well, good morning, Facebook family and friends and everybody else. So this morning I decided to bring to you a story and a song. The story is a true story. The song is about the true story. The song name is called "The Year 1959," actually the year I was born. The backstory to this is when I was a baby, a year and a half, somewhere in there. I'm not real sure of the date and time. I was kidnapped by my biological father, literally, physically, stolen from a baby bed by knife, as the story goes, from an aunt that was babysitting me at the time. A little bit of history is after a couple years there, no reconciliation between my parents. Of course, it's all hindsight and learning about what took place during those times. He claims that she wasn't fit, and she claims that he was abusive, and I'll speak more to that in just a second. But basically, what happened was my mother got into a new relationship, and my father had really major issues with that. It turns out that I was calling, I guess as a baby, I started calling another man daddy. That really set him off, and not real sure what decisions were made, why, and like I said, I was just along for the ride for the most part. Um, After being kidnapped, we went on the run. The years and years went by. I didn't really have any inkling as to what all had taken place. Except when I was, I guess, about 17, I had found a letter from him to her being my believed mom. Um, and it said something about Hank and his new mommy. Well, I was confused by that. I asked, and it was just, was shrugged off about it. It was just love talk, no big deal. So didn't really give it much of a thought past that. Then one day, got a phone call from a lady claiming to be my biological or my real mother. And we had a pretty good conversation, as you can imagine. And in that conversation, she started telling me about who I was, who my father was, and all the things that had transpired and everything, and her side of the story, so to speak. And it was it was awkward to have that conversation, of course, initially. And then during that time, one of the things is when I was about 14, 15 years old, I had found out I had seen that I had a cut on my left hand, a very large cut. And I asked my father one day, I said, I don't remember getting cut. When did that happen? Or how did it happen? He said, I don't remember. I think you was playing with some barbed wire or something, and you you cut your hand. So I never really got it. It wasn't a good answer. I didn't really see somebody that big of a cut because it basically spanned my whole palm. And I said, oh well, I didn't really get a good answer, and that's all I was going to get, and that was it. And something you have to know about my father, he I did find out, after it was over said and done, but he was an abusive man as I was growing up. I mean, don't get me wrong, he wasn't beating me every 5 minutes, but he could get mad really quick, and he meant to make it hurt, and he never really was one that had any kind of tenderness in his heart or really showed any kind of love and compassion. It was he was more like a vase on a shelf or something of that nature living in his house. Um, but anyway, back to the story. I had asked her about this cut, and she said, "Oh yeah, you when you were a baby, you fell off a porch and you cut your left hand, and we thought you were going to lose your hand. Of course, you didn't, and so that answered that. Well, of course, you can imagine. I called my father and I said, "Well, do you know this person? Do you know anything about this?" And he said, "Yeah." And of course, his answer was, "I was wondering when that bad penny was going to turn up." And so he came up to where I was living at the time, and of course he made all his claims and about who and what she was, and you know how that story goes. Mommy says this, daddy says that, and it's not a good thing for any child at any age, any time. But anyway, we had the story that we had. After years of you know back and forth interlude conversation, dry spells and stuff, well, things started to come together, and I actually made a pilgrimage up to Ohio And what was kind of surreal is going to where my mother lived was not where all of this took place. I was born in Barberton, and all this happened in Barberton, Ohio. But anyway, they took me to where the house where all this took place, and it was very surreal to be a man of 42 at that time, to walk up or get out of the car and walk up and know exactly where I was at. And literally, from the time of being about a year and a half old to 2 years old, somewhere in that neighborhood, I had never stepped foot in Barberton in my entire life. But when I got out of the car, I knew exactly where I was at. I remembered the house. I remembered the street. I remembered where I played there. And so it was very, very interesting feeling to have that. So anyway, finding out a whole lot about what took place, and I talked to a bunch of people, and the abusiveness, validations of stories or validation of lies kind of came along with it too. So, his story is like I said, she didn't want me, and his story was that he was completely justified in what he did. Her story was that I was stolen away, and from all other accounts, it affected her greatly, and which you can imagine that it did. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to sing you the song now. The song is called "The Year 1959." I'm working on this. This is actually going to be part of an EP that I'm trying to put together, or wanting to put together. How about that? Not trying to, I'm wanting to, and trying to put all the pieces together. The EP is going to be called Changes, and there's several songs in there that, now that you know this story, you'll know about those other songs will have a little bit more meaning to us. That's why I decided to put this out there this morning. Like I said, this is called "The Year 1959." "1959, born into a world that would soon be upside down, born to a father who doesn't know the word love, and a mother that was sick, didn't want a baby around. The violence grew stronger, and tenderness turned to pain. He took out his anger on those who remained. She broke under pressure, and she would soon find her baby was gone, except in her mind. He claimed to be the victim. He claimed to have the right for stealing the child away like a thief in the night. Yeah, he stole the love away, the child they couldn't find, but she stayed right there in 1959. Years and days pass by, and life will go on. Then one day, a story on the phone, and from the things she said, it turned life around. And now she's made her claim. Lord, my child has been found. Truth of everything unfolded over time. He hoped to never have to speak of 1959. He swore that he was right in everything he said, he hoped that he'd get lucky and maybe she'd be dead. He claimed to be the victim, and he claimed to have a right for stealing the child away like a thief in the night. He stole the love away, the child they wouldn't find, but she stayed right there in 1959. The story's far from over, there's so much more to tell, and for the things he's done, Lord, now he'll spend his time in hell. And he has no claim to me or anything that's mine. She stayed right there in 1959. The world changed for all of us in 1959. Well, now you know the story.